Hello everybody, so if you look behind me you will see that the Keezer build has started in earnest. Now this is going to be the first video in the series of videos with me building the Keezer. Today I'm just going to take you through some of my choices in terms of the design and how I put the design together, and do some stuff on the kind of initial steps like building and fitting the collar that's on there behind me. So let's get on with it. Okay, so the design is loosely based around something that I've seen on a few threads on the internet, so I'll put a couple of links down to threads for builds that are quite similar to the thing that I'm going to try and do myself. It's also very similar to the one that Chris Robertson's done, so I've been looking at the Keezer that he's got with a lot of envy for some time, and I wanted to go down that route as well. So essentially it's the kind of bar top or coffin type, some people call it, Keezer with the tap tower fitted on the top of it. Now, I decided to use Google SketchUp to do some design work on this before I kind of set off with the build itself. My woodworking skills, as you'll see later, are not of a high enough standard for me to kind of freestyle this and just make it up as I go along, so wanted to plan it all out, see what was happening, and just make sure that it actually fitted in the space and all that sort of stuff. So I used that. It's actually really I wouldn't say easy software to use, but it's quite intuitive. You can pick it up fairly quickly. I've dabbled with it a few times in the past, but not for ages, so it took me a little while to get going with it. But once I worked out how to use the different tools and controls and layers, particularly for this, it worked quite well. So if you are planning a project like this, I think that's a good option, and it's freely you can use it for free on the internet as well. So there's a free web browser version of that software. You used to be able to download the full software itself and use that for free, but now it's a web only thing unless you pay for the premium option. Anyway, let's get into that and I'll talk you through the design via the SketchUp. Okay, so here we have it. This is the design in SketchUp. If the real thing comes out looking anywhere near as good as this, I'll be more than chuffed, but we'll have to wait and see whether my DIY skills match my sort of 3D modelling skills at the moment. So bar top area here, I've not put in all the details of what's going to be happening on the top of this on this model, so you'll have to wait and see for some of those. But as you can see, a tap tower thing at the back, 4 taps, so the holes there for the taps. That's a drip tray in the middle, and it's all mounted on top of the collar, which we've already seen on top of the Keezer. Now, the first thing to note with this is that I'm not going to be building a full cabinet surround around the actual freezer here down the bottom. So what I might do, as you can kind of see in this picture, is just paint it black. So I might get some spray paint, car spray paint or something like that, and spray it black just to make it look a little bit nicer than it does at the moment, because it's a bit bashed up and dirty, and won't look as good with the original finish on it as far as I'm concerned. So that is one thing that I'm going to do a bit different with this to a lot of the designs you'll see online. The reason for that, although I would love to build the full cabinet surround, is I'm a bit limited for space, and I don't really want to increase the footprint of the base of it any more than it already is. So it's just going to be too much of a squeeze to get that on there, but also have a tabletop that's going to fit in between all the other stuff that I've got in the shed. So that was one decision that I had to make fairly early on, based on just the measurements that I had to work with. And yeah, hopefully it will still look good. I think it will. And I've always got the option to add the cabinets around later on if I do have more room to do it, or I decide to put the Keezer somewhere else. So shouldn't be a problem if I want to sort of build that in as a later addition. Anyway, let's just give it a little spin round and have a look. So we've got the edging on the top of the bar there, and then a lower area underneath. So I'm just going to put some plywood on top of the freezer lid to create the base for the actual bar area. There is going to be some kind of inlay stuff going on here, but as I said, that's something to wait and see how that works out later on. A simple kind of skirt around the bottom of the lid. So let's take away some of these layers so you can see what's going on a little bit better. So if we start off with just the freezer itself and disappear everything else. Now, I haven't completely mastered how you're supposed to use the layers on here, because as you take stuff away, you'll notice that it leaves some of the vectors behind, or lines from the other drawings, and also sort of strips away the surface from some of the other shapes, but you can still get a general idea of where stuff is and what it's doing. So as we take all the pieces away, we end up with just the, well, basically what I've got at the moment, which is just the freezer with the collar on the top of it. So yeah, the black box underneath just represents the dimensions of the freezer with the lid removed, and this is the wooden collar that goes around the top of it. Now I'm going to be using 140mm CLS timber to do that, and a lot of people will use the collar to actually mount the taps through on the front here. I've got a 3-year-old, so unless I want my shed to turn into a beer swimming pool, then that's not really an option for me. And also, again, with the limited space in here, I don't really want the taps sticking out the front where they're going to get snagged on things when I'm moving stuff around in the shed and that sort of thing. So didn't want to do that. Wanted to go with the kind of tap tower on the top of it, but you still need the collar there to first of all raise the level of the actual bar top up, so it's a more sensible height for a bar, and secondly to give enough room in the freezer for the kegs to stand up in. Now this particular Keezer, you can't actually see on here the internals of it because I didn't bother drawing those in, but I can actually get even the taller kegs into the freezer as it is with the lid on, which is great. But there is a little shelf area here for the compressor, and if I want to use that, I do need the collar on there to get other kegs on top of that as well. So with the collar there, I can get up to 6 kegs in there. Whether or not I do go for the full 6, I'm not sure. I might still end up putting the gas bottle in there, which may mean I don't have enough room to do that. So yeah, 140mm CLS timber to create a simple wooden collar. We'll have a look at how successful I was doing that in a bit with the real thing. Then we add in the lid for the freezer. So the lid is just going to be refitted with the brackets onto the back of the collar, as you can see there. Again, it's lost the faces of this shape to the other layer for some reason, but once that is back on, we can fit the plywood top, and on the top there is going to be again a skirt here with some I think 47mm strip wood just to go around the base. So I'm going to screw these onto the bottom edge of the plywood round the sides and the front, and that's basically going to give me something to mount the more decorative wood for the front, for the skirting of the bar top onto that. So plywood, 12mm plywood on the top, and then we've got our skirting strip wood around the edges. Then we get into the more decorative wood there. So we've got the what is it that I've bought? I think it's spruce that I'm using for this. So I would have loved to have gone for, you know, really nice, fancy, expensive wood to use on this, but it would have just cost me hundreds of pounds to get anything decent. So I've just gone with some cheap kind of white softwood, which I believe is spruce, from the local DIY store, and I will be staining that and varnishing it and trying to make it look pretty that way. Hopefully it's nice and straight and relatively free of knots and other faults that will spoil that effect, but we shall see. So that goes on there, and then once we've got the skirt on there, we can have the top edging, which is again the same material, and will just be fitted onto the top edge. So there's going to be a little bit of an overhang there. I think that's about 35mm, the overhang over the edge, just to give me a little bit more surface area on the top. Little gap at the back. I didn't want to use the full width board on the back edge either, just to make sure there was more room for this sort of interior inlay bit. I'm going to leave the plywood in the middle bare, I think, and again kind of varnish over that or stain it maybe, and just keep that kind of natural wood effect or I might paint it. I'll see how it looks when I do that. So then we get the tap box. So the tap box is basically just a very simple wooden box that I'm going to make with some MDF and more strip wood to create the frame, and that's just basically going to provide the structure for all the internals to go into and also the surround to be mounted on top of. So the surround, which we have there, will be made with more of the spruce, and there you can see the full effect with all the holes for the taps. This section here is recessed to give a little bit of room underneath for glasses basically to be underneath the taps, and also it gives me a little area here where I can do some decoration. I think I've seen something else that people use this recessed bit for that makes it look really cool. Again, I'll save that for later episodes, but I'm going to use that for decorative effect as well. So the back of it will just have a kind of push fit board to seal it up, put some sort of insulation around the inside, and obviously a hole down through the base and the lid of the freezer to get into the pipework. This little bit here is just representing a drip tray, so I found a nice long stainless steel drip tray that I'm going to be able to fit, so I'm going to have to recess that slightly into the lid, the plywood on the lid, so might have to get the router out to do that because it's just slightly higher than this strip of wood at the back, so I think it will look better if it's just dropped down a touch so it fits with that. And that's it, so that's everything that's there really. As I said, hopefully I can make it look as smart as it does on this software, but we shall see. Okay, so this is the progress so far. We have the collar built and fitted, and I'm pleased to say it does actually fit on top of the freezer. So as I mentioned before, this is 140mm tall or wide even CLS timber, so 38mm there, 140 there to there. 38mm fits the kind of outer edge of the freezer perfectly, so that, as you can see, works really well there. And height wise, this gives me just enough room to get more kegs onto that shelf there if I need to, and it will also bring the top of the bar up to about here, so just above, for a short ass like me, belly button height, which is about right for a bar area. It's all good. So I did have a few problems with this. You can see that's probably one of the better joints that I did, but you can see I've used mitered joints on here. Now, my first attempts, due in part to my lackluster DIY skills, in part due to some of the timber being a bit warped and twisted, and also in part due to a slightly inadequate miter saw that I was using that wasn't really big enough to do the 440 mils. It ended up a bit shit, to be honest, so it didn't fit very well. It was all buckled and wasn't straight, and I couldn't get it on here, so I just took it all apart and started, well, I didn't start completely again, but I redid a lot of the cuts, replaced a couple of the pieces that were badly warped, and it's come out much better this time. So you can see it's pretty much nicely flush all the way around. Yeah, and the joints are okay on the whole. This is probably one of the worst ones over here, but this bit of timber here had a bit of a twist in it, so I couldn't really get that one to meet up as flush as some of the other ones like this. Yeah, my woodworking skills were tested a little bit on this. I didn't realise that trying to put the screws in straight through on this sort of corner would be a complete disaster, so I was trying to do that initially, and those of you who've tried that before will know that it's basically just going to push the joint apart when you do it that way. So the screws are kind of pocketed in here and put in on the diagonal now, so that it joins the two faces together. Gonna get a bit of filler on these, tidy it all up, probably fill in the screw holes as well, sand it all off, and then I've got a little bit more to do on this in terms of preparing it so that I can put the lid of the freezer on top. So and I'll be getting rid of our little visitor there as well. So yeah, I'll come back with some footage once that's all done, maybe a little bit of footage of me doing that, and then you'll see what my ideas are for sealing it up and getting it properly fitted on the top. Okay, so I've filled and sanded in all the gaps on the joints there, just help to make it all look a little bit tidier, as you can see. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of sealant on the inside of the wood to help protect it from any moisture and stuff that's going to come through. I'm also going to put something else over it as well, which I'll show you in a minute, but for now I'm just going to give it a quick coat of sealant, let that dry, and then we're nearly ready to fit it. Right, so I'm just putting down the last of this aluminium tape, which I've used to line the inside of the collar, so that's going to hopefully protect the wood from any moisture, and also obviously help aid the insulating properties of it. I think I saw this stuff being used on Beanham Homebrews kegerator, or Kegzilla as it should properly be known. If you haven't seen that, the videos for that, check out the link that I put up for that. His build was amazing. I can't remember how many taps were on it, but it's an absolute beast. Anyway, I'm going to get on with this, and then last thing to do is just glue it onto the top of the freezer. Okay, so the foil's all on. It didn't go on quite as smoothly as I was hoping to, but it's okay and it looks reasonably decent. It's now time to stick the collar onto the top here. So, got some of this ingeniously named adhesive, all-weather adhesive, so resistant to temperature changes, which is obviously going to be good for this purpose. Basically, it's supposed to be able to stick everything, and yeah, it's got a really good kind of thick sort of rubbery consistency to it as well, so it should do a good job of kind of filling in the gaps between the wood, although it sits pretty flush anyway, but filling those gaps and making sure it's nicely sealed between the collar and the freezer top. So let's get on with it. So this bit is definitely a job which I think I would benefit from having a helper to do this with, but I'll try my best. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just make sure it's all lined up. Okay, that's as good as it's going to get. No glue leaking out, which is a good thing. So next we just need to get the lid back on. Right, so the lid's on. I haven't secured the brackets at the back on there yet because it's not yet dried, the glue for the collar, so I will leave that until tomorrow, but that's it for now. So pleased with the progress that I've made today, and I'll see you on the next video when we will be hopefully putting down some plywood on the top here. These little end bits here are going to have to go, so I've already started chipping away at that one to see how easy it is to get off, but this sits proud of the top and I want the plywood to basically be glued flat onto there. So those have got to come off, and then plywood on the top, and then we can start building the actual bar top itself. Okay, so see you next time.
I'm the dude. So that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness, or duder, or, you know, El Duderino.